Let's take a second right now to have a moment of silence for Washington Mystics owner Shelly Johnson, who suggested that the WNBA as a whole should have been on the cover of Time magazine instead of just Caitlin Clark.
2 months apart, 2 declarations, and one startling admission of hypocrisy. Sheila Johnson, the owner of the Washington Mystics, publicly downplayed Caitlin Clark's time as an Athlete of the Year, claiming that the entire WNBA should receive the award rather than just one player.
However, a lot of people are noticing the fact that we all remember Sheila Johnson, right? The Mystics owner that went on CNN that was none too pleased about Caitlin Clark having received the Time Magazine Athlete of the Year. She made absurd comments.
However, Johnson's recent announcement about Fever Games has caused the basketball world to erupt in reactions, proving that deeds speak louder than words. The owner, who asserted that Caitlin Clark wasn't the only one drawing attention to the league, is now making commercial moves that demonstrate the complete reverse. The startling statistics supporting her most recent action reveal the true nature of the situation. We have all the receipts, including one award where Johnson was eerily silent. Johnson doesn't want you to listen, so stay put. Are you ready to leave?
Where Caitlin Clark was named Athlete of the Year. Why couldn't they have put the whole WNBA on that cover and said, the WNBA is the League of the Year because of all the talent that we have?
Remember, when a WNBA owner came out swinging against the most exciting event to occur in the league in years? That's precisely what happened when Sheila Johnson, the owner of the Washington Mystics, chose to publicly mock Caitlin Clark's time as the league's Athlete of the Year during a CNN interview. Let's examine Johnson's actual remarks, since they contain some very telling information. Johnson maintained that rather than recognizing Clark on an individual basis, the WNBA as a whole ought to have taken a moment to consider the reasoning behind the idea that an individual achievement award, which is intended to reward a single exceptional player, ought to have been distributed among more than 100 players.
Because when you just keep singling out one player, it creates hard feelings.
This sentence poses a fascinating query. Johnson went further by implying that there was a racial component to Clark's recognition. I feel terrible because I've seen so many players of color who are equally talented, and they never got the recognition that they should have with that statement. Was Johnson sincerely worried about team morale, or was there another factor influencing these remarks? What may have been a debate about individual versus collective acknowledgement was turned into something much more polarizing by Johnson.
Ouch, hasn't it? The Caitlin Clark effect. Why do you think that has been the case?
Well, I want to be very diplomatic about this. It's just the structure of the way media plays out race. I'm going to be very honest. I feel really bad because I've seen so many players of color that are equally as talented, and they never got the recognition that they should have. And I think right now, it is time for that to happen.
Johnson's criticism is especially perplexing because it totally ignores the quantifiable impact Clark had on the league. The numbers paint an unmistakable picture. Last year, when Johnson's team played the Fever against the Mystics, the average attendance was around 20,000. But when other teams came to the Mystics, they had trouble filling even 5,000 seats. That's not just a small bump. It's a seismic shift in fan engagement.
Caitlin has brought a ton of new opportunity, a ton of new eyeballs, and more money to the sport. So instead of downplaying the magnitude of who she is and what she's brought, enjoy the ride and take advantage of the ride.
Beyond merely filling seats, Clark's impact was enormous. Her inclusion in the league caused Fever game attendance to triple and overall jersey sales to soar by an incredible 1,000%. These are transformative figures that show how one player can raise the profile and financial prospects of an entire league, not just impressive numbers.
While the NBA's ratings continue to drop over 30% as they try to figure out who is going to fill the shoes of LeBron James, Kevin Durant, and Steph Curry, the WNBA has a golden goose sitting in their league. and has done, it's gotten better, but has done everything to kind of discredit the momentum and eyeballs she's brought to this game.
What's most telling about this circumstance, do you know? In her Time magazine interview, Clark took the high road in responding to the criticism rather than retaliating or becoming embroiled in needless drama. She dismissed any notions of jealousy within the league and emphasized respect for one another among players. She also dismissed any defensiveness or counterattacks, only quiet confidence in her own journey.
So Caitlyn is someone who has, if you look at it, done everything you're supposed to do and has been criticized along every step of the way. Again, she's damned if she does, and she's damned if she doesn't.
The stark difference between Clark's response and Johnson's comment says it all. Johnson's criticism was intended to preserve team unity and ensure fair recognition, but one person tried to downplay an individual accomplishment and paint it as potentially damaging, while the other demonstrated grace under pressure and refused to be led into conflict. Or was it the beginning of something else, a pattern of behavior that would grow harder to ignore over time?
I mean, honestly, we know how this owner feels about Caitlin Clark. Let us not forget this.
When A'ja Wilson received one of the Women of the Year awards recently, Johnson's impassioned speech about acknowledging the entire league vanished more quickly than Capital One Arena playoff tickets, making that pattern of behavior crystal clear. Why was there such a worry about hurt feelings when it wasn't there? With Caitlin Clark in the forefront, Sheila Johnson had the ideal opportunity to once again defend her alleged beliefs about team recognition over individual accolades when Time magazine named A'ja Wilson one of their Women of the Year, honoring her outstanding contributions to women's basketball. This prestigious individual recognition put Wilson in the same position as Clark had been in only months earlier, when a single player was recognized for her accomplishments.
Time magazine backed themselves into a confusing corner with their latest blunder. This is a Whiskey Riff right here. When they crowned their Athlete of the Year last year, they did the right thing by giving the title to Indiana Fever star Caitlin Clark. Surprisingly, there was some backlash to the decision, which is absurd, with many in the WNBA saying the award should have been given to the entire league instead of just Clark.
However, she remained silent, made no remarks, did not go on CNN this time, and made no impassioned argument for why the WNBA should have honored all of its women rather than only Wilson the deafening. Wilson's honor represented the exact situation Johnson claimed to be troubled by, but her principles mysteriously disappeared overnight. The Mystics owner's silence revealed a great deal about what was truly driving her previous criticism. Recall all those worries about hurting players' feelings when they receive special recognition. Apparently, those worries have an expiration date, or perhaps they were never real in the first place.
The Mystics owner went on CNN and was like, I think it would have been nice if they'd have put the entire league on the front cover of Time magazine as Athlete of the Year. Well, there wasn't but one athlete that was moving all the numbers. All right, that was influencing all the money. Gate revenue, attendance, ratings, all the stuff we've talked about, right? There's only one. Right, wrong, or indifferent, just one. Plays in Indiana, wears 22, right?
The league took notice of this obvious discrepancy, and WNBA player Lexi Brown openly criticized the unfair posting. Would you kindly stop us from going backwards? Her annoyance mirrored the thoughts of many gamers. In contrast to Johnson's earlier assertions of players growing resentful, why did the worry only arise while Clark was in the spotlight if it was genuinely about justice and team cohesion? The league as a whole praised Wilson's accomplishment, and players applauded rather than objected to her personal honor. The stark contrast highlights a troubling aspect of Johnson's original ISM. This was the ideal chance to show her convictions were consistent once more, arguing that individual honors diminish collective achievement. However, she chose to remain silent, implying that her initial outrage had nothing to do with maintaining team unity and everything to do with the person receiving the recognition.
People, keep in mind, this is a business. When Nike signs an athlete, Okay, they want to get an ROI, return on their investment. How do they do that? Because that athlete resonates. You understand that Caitlin Clark, her jerseys, her apparel, if she has an apparel deal, her shoes will sell.
The fact that Johnson only spoke out against Clark's recognition and kept quiet about Wilson's award shows a troubling selectivity to her principles. Let's face it, if she truly thought that individual accolades caused division in women's basketball, her response to both honors would have been the same. What is most telling about this situation, do you know? When two superstars receive nearly identical individual recognition just months apart and a team owner only criticizes one of them, we're not talking about principles anymore. We're talking about targeting. Why do you think Johnson is targeting Clark specifically? Let us know in the comments. It's not just the hypocrisy of Johnson's chosen outrage. It's what that selectivity reveals about her true motivations.
The Mystics were moving the two games that were coming to their town with Caitlin Clark and the Indiana Fever. They were moving them to Baltimore. All right. Now, in case you're wondering, that Mystics home arena that they play on normally and brag about selling it out is only 4,200 fans. I mean, come on. 4,200 fans, right?
When Johnson discreetly announced a venue change exclusively for Fever games, from a fourth 200-seat arena to one holding 14,000, the facade of principled leadership slipped to reveal something far more transparent, a business decision that contradicted everything she claimed to stand for. Johnson's beliefs about team over individual lasted exactly as long as it took to calculate potential ticket revenue.
Caitlin Clark comes to town. They move it to a 14,000-seat arena. I mean, that's nearly 10,000 more fans.
Johnson made a calculated announcement that revealed her true feelings. The Washington Mystics would be moving their home games against the Indiana Fever to Baltimore's CFG Bank Arena. This wasn't just any venue upgrade, though. It meant more than tripling their capacity, going from the entertainment and sports arena's small 4,200 seats to a space that could accommodate close to 14,000 spectators. The selective application of the modification, not just the change itself, is what makes this choice so illuminating. The Indiana Fever, the same team that featured the player Johnson had publicly implied wasn't entirely to blame for the league's rising popularity, was the target of this venue change. She didn't even choose games against several elite teams or announce a permanent move to a larger venue for all Mystics games.
Means the gate prices, all right? The gate prices for the game will actually go up. In other words, just like that preseason game, they has got tickets for $4,500. A run-of-the-mill game like this, we all know Caitlin Clark tickets are expensive.
Given the demand and the nearly 10,000 extra tickets that will likely be sold at premium prices for each game, the financial ramifications are unavoidable. A conservative estimate would indicate that millions more in ticket revenue could be generated from these games alone, all thanks to the popularity of the player Johnson had tried to minimize.
Raising the amount of money it will cost to get into this game, she may end up lining her own pockets with more money because the gate prices may go way up, and she's going to force Caitlin Clark fans to pay additional money to get into the game by putting in a bigger but not as big venue.
Social media exploded with criticism pointing out the discrepancy between Johnson's statements and her actions as soon as basketball fans realized the disparity. One fan didn't hold back. Isn't this the same owner that minimized CeCe's influence and now takes advantage of the ticket sales? Another fan pointedly questioned whether the Mystics should move all of their games there because their owner didn't seem to want to give Caitlin any credit for the women's basketball movement, but was happy with the extra money from Fever games. As one fan put it, "Wait, why just the Fever games? Why not every game? Or are you choking on your words about the face of the league?" These weren't just online critics. They were WNBA supporters who understood the stark inconsistency between disparaging individual recognition and profiting from individual star power.
And this year, something clicked in the WNBA because of the draft and the players that came in. It's not just Caitlin Clark. Yes, it is. You telling me somebody spending $4,500 for an Angel Reese game Get the bleep out of here. Yeah, the mother bleep out of here. It's Angel Reese. She continued. We have so much talent out there that has been unrecognized, and I don't think we can pin it on just one player.
Johnson is not the only one who is changing the location of Fever games. Other WNBA clubs have followed suit, but they didn't first appear on national television to downplay Clark's contribution to the league. Instead, they acknowledged the facts without implying that praising one player would cause animosity. When Johnson stated that the entire WNBA deserved appreciation, not just Clark, it was an unintentional admission that Caitlin Clark was the driving force behind the extraordinary interest in women's basketball and that the venue shift was more than just a financial decision. Her actions eventually show her true convictions, even though her words had some weight. Her choice to deliberately take advantage of Clark's pulling ability by changing venues reveals the falsity of her earlier claims.
I don't agree with the Mystics owner saying that the whole WNBA should have been named up, because that's not true. The whole WNBA benefited this year from the viewership increase.
What does this indicate about the current status of WNBA leadership? Can league executives keep disparaging individual stars in public while developing business plans centered around them in private? This discrepancy between public messaging and private decision-making undermines credibility, and effects these incidents confirm what basketball analysts have been saying for a long time, that there is more than one owner. In addition to disparaging Clark's individual accomplishments, Johnson's remarks caused needless divisiveness in a league that ought to be honoring its rising stars. When we consider the whole picture, the hypocrisy becomes painfully clear.
There's some other players that get deals, men and women, okay, that have signature shoes that, despite how good they are as a player, great as they are as a player, they don't move product because it doesn't resonate. It doesn't translate. What translates is when Caitlin Clark came into the league and 30,000 jerseys were already ordered, that the Indiana Fever, the season tickets were already sold out. When you go on the road to the Mystics and they have to change the venue in which it's going to be played to play, where the Wizards play, okay, on a couple of occasions. It's only certain people that do that. Whether you like Caitlin or not, are you interested? If you're a ball player, it's certain aspects you got to love about Caitlin's game.
As observers have noted, the WNBA's future depends on appreciating individual excellence rather than eroding it, as evidenced by players like Clark. Instead of diminishing the league as a whole, make it better. What we're seeing is that NBA leadership must unite behind its talent rather than fostering unneeded conflict, not just focus on one star receiving attention. The discrepancy between public declarations and private business choices highlights the true problem. When a star propels growth, it benefits women's basketball as a whole. Perhaps this is what most terrifies some executives when they acknowledge that they depend on their stars just as much as their stars depend on the league. Do you agree? If so, please leave a comment, subscribe, and enable all notifications so you don't miss anything. We'll see you in the next one after you click the video on the screen.